How a small sect became a global movement in one generation. Acts traces spirit-powered witness from Jerusalem to Rome through ordinary people who couldn't be stopped. This is Seek, Go, Create. You're listening to Read the New Testament in 90 days, 27 books, in order, in context. We're walking through the New Testament the way it was written so you can hear it the way the first churches did. Make sure before we get going here, we've got a lot of information in this episode. Make sure you get the reading plan, k2m.foundation/NT90. I'm going to try to move quickly here. Today's stop is Acts. We just finished up Luke, and now we stay with Luke, his second part. Same author, same audience, same project. Luke and Acts is one story in 2 volumes. What Jesus began to do in the gospel, Luke, he continues to do through his followers here in Acts. All right, let's talk about some key facts here. First of all, the author was Luke. Of course, this is the sequel to his gospel. I'm excited in the reading plan we're able to put the 2 back to back. I think many times we read them separately. And the years fell when they were written where it was close enough. There's a batch of things going on right now. So we put Luke and Acts together. We're right around AD 62. And the audience, interestingly enough, is an individual, Theophilus. That's who it says that it was written to. We don't know exactly who he was, but Luke calls him most excellent, a word called kratiste, the same title used for Roman officials like Felix and Festus. That suggests he may have been a magistrate or an official, possibly one connected to Paul's case. We'll mention something in just a moment. The setting, 32 years post-resurrection. The story spans from AD 30, about the time of the cross and resurrection, all the way up to present, so current, AD 62, which it sort of ends abruptly, but that also is going to back up something I'm going to say in just a moment. The temple is still standing in Jerusalem, and it's still 8 years away from that being destroyed. Here's some historical context. In Rome, we're going to see multiple emperors across the narrative. Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero, all throughout the history, I guess, of Acts. Paul ends under house arrest in Rome, and Nero is on the throne at that time. So when it was released, it would have been Nero. Jerusalem, the temple is intact throughout the story of Acts. We do get some major items like Stephen is martyred, James is executed, believers are scattered. The church, this is what's beautiful about Acts. We see the church go from about 120 people in an upper room to communities that are scattered across the Roman Empire. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, Antioch, Galatia, Macedonia, Achaia, Rome. They're everywhere, and that is what I love about Acts. We just see the spread of this body of people during this time. The tension, we really see it here. We've discussed it in other areas, but there's opposition from the Sanhedrin, the synagogues, pagan mobs, yet persecution scatters and spreads the gospel. Why now? Luke writes as Paul awaits trial. The story ends open because it's not over. All right, and here's something that I want to bring up. Is this a legal brief? Some scholars see Luke and Acts as a 2-volume defense for Paul. Notice how Roman officials consistently find Jesus and Paul innocent throughout both volumes. If Theophilus is connected to Paul's case, Luke is giving him everything he needs to understand who these Christians are and why they're no threat to Rome. I want to be upfront. This is serious when I say this. There is no hard evidence for who Theophilus was or why Luke wrote, but as I've been reading it more and more, I've been operating under the assumption that it has a legal document aspect to it for a defense of Paul. And let me just say, if you want to read it in that perspective, I don't think it's going to mess it up for you. In fact, I think it's really going to cause it to pop for you. It really, really does make some sense in that area. So don't take my word for it. I'm not making a doctrine out of it or saying that's what you need to do. I'm just giving you something that I've speculated on, and I think it has some merit. I've been reading it as that, and once you see it, I can tell you what, it's a hard pattern to unsee. Here's what you're going to encounter. Acts is movement and momentum. The Spirit drives the mission forward. And also, there's this it doesn't have to be said, but that power of the resurrection, that thing that separates this movement apart from everything else, is really the gasoline that keeps that engine going. And so we hear discussions about the resurrection. You hear things like Paul and others talking about sharing the gospel. And we have to understand that what that means is they were sharing the good news of the gospel, which is the resurrection of Christ. So anyway, powerful stuff. Here's what you'll hear about Pentecost and the early signs. The Spirit comes like fire and wind. Peter preaches, 3,000 believe, healings and prison breaks follow. Stephen's martyrdom and the scattering. The first Christian martyr dies. Saul guards the coats while they do it in the mid to early 30s. Persecution scatters believers, and wherever they go, they preach. The persecutor becomes an apostle. Saul of Tarsus meets the risen Christ. I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. Luke later calls him Paul as the mission shifts to Gentile territory. The Gentile door opens. Peter's vision, Cornelius's household, the Jerusalem Council. Paul's journeys, 3 missionary journeys, planting churches across the empire. And then there's what many of us consider to be an unfinished ending. Paul in Rome, preaching with all boldness and without hindrance, and then Roman officials declare innocence. Galileo dismisses charges. Festus and Agrippa agree Paul has done nothing deserving death. Luke is building a case. Jesus' warnings fulfilled in real time. Stephen was martyred right around AD 30. We mentioned that earlier. James beheaded around AD 44. The famine under Claudius, AD 46 to 48. In Luke's gospel, Jesus warned it would happen within this generation. In Acts, Luke shows Theophilus it's happening. No verdict, no conclusion, because this story isn't quite over. Let's look again at this Theophilus lens, the audience. That's what we're attempting to do in this reading the New Testament context, is put ourselves as best we can in the seat of the audience. As you read, put yourself in Theophilus's place. Luke has given you 2 volumes of evidence, eyewitnesses, miracles, transformed lives, unstoppable expansion. Now you have to decide, did it happen? Who is this Jesus, and who is this Paul? A dangerous criminal or faithful witness to a risen king? Now, let's read Acts. Over the next 6 sessions, you'll be able to read the story of the early church. Try to read it again. Try to group it together if you can, but you've got 6 sessions that you can read that in. What comes up next? Oh, another great one, Hebrews. The warning to not turn back. Jesus is better than everything you might go back to. Make sure you remember to go to k2m.foundation/NT90. And once again, keep sharing this with a friend who might want to read scripture with context. Now, before you read, let's set the scene. It's AD 62. You are Theophilus. A scroll has arrived, the second one from Luke. The first told you who Jesus was. This one tells you what happened next. You unroll it. 32 years of history, from an upper room in Jerusalem to communities across the empire. Persecution, prison breaks, famines, martyrs, and through it all, unstoppable expansion. And now Paul, the man whose trial may cross your desk, awaits verdict in Rome. Luke has given you everything you need: the witnesses, the evidence, the pattern. Now, you read the case and you decide.